back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. It's already been a chaotic morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. We've been doing all sorts of things in the green room because we have not one co-host, but we have two co-hosts. And one of them is new, Ellie Hume, Regional Director from Your Part-Time Controller. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm thrilled to be here, and especially to be here with Wendy on my first go-round.
Well, Wendy Adams, CFRE, CEO of Cultivate for Good, is a pro at this because she is one of our intrepid co-hosts. And we wanted to bring her in so that Ellie and I could talk to her about leading with presence. And there's so much change right now in the nonprofit sector. Some might argue there's always change, but a lot of it's leadership. And so, Wendy, this is going to be a great conversation. Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited. Like Ellie says, it's the powerhouse conversation with the two of you.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to teach us a lot of things, and we might have a few hair on fire moments. So you'll have to extinguish that, Ellie, as we go through it. You know, one of the things we never want to extinguish is our amazing support that we have. And these come from companies such as Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and Holdings for Good. I'm Julia C. Patrick. As I mentioned, I'm super excited to welcome Ellie Hume, your part-time controller, and she is a regional director. I knew her when Ellie, you mentioned in the green room that there's an anniversary of sorts coming up this week for you.
Yes, it will be on Friday. I will celebrate my 14th anniversary with YPTC. I'm very, very excited. I honestly never thought I'd be with one single company for that long, but I've had the pleasure of being able to grow and enjoy a lot of different roles at the organization. And it's just been a pleasure to be part of YPTC for such a long time and see it grow and experience leadership change in myself and in others through this. So I'm excited to bring that to the conversation today.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. And so this is going to be a really cool conversation. Of course, you know, Wendy Adams, you will know her from previous episodes. We always tease that although we've never met one another IRL, I think that we're like total sisters. We have so many things that are the same, so many things that are completely the opposite. And it's been just a fabulous, fabulous part of my life to have Wendy Adams, CFRE, and she is the CEO of Cultivate for Good. But you have a really cool thing that you're also doing. Can you talk to us about that, Wendy, before we jump into the conversation?
Absolutely. Julia, thank you so much. Well, you know, I've been having such great conversations with you, with other leaders in the sector, and I was told, you're being selfish with it, Wendy, share. So there's a podcast. We just stepped into the Cultivate Experience for season 2. The 25th episode will run tomorrow. We'll kick off. So yeah, I'm just having some exciting conversations, learning, and little teaser, being present with each of those leaders week in and week out. So every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Eastern, we've got a new episode that jumps off, and digging into leadership and just learning, celebrating with leaders, and then being a support in those areas of opportunity for growth. So yeah, just having a blast.
I love it. And I love that we're having this conversation because it's a time of change. It's a time of new thinking about leadership, and especially in the nonprofit sector. So let's talk about this. And I can't wait to get both of your opinions. The RTR aspect, the emotional intelligence of read the room. Okay, what does that mean and how do we do it?
Well, come on, let's just talk about this. One of the titles that I affectionately have been given is Elephant Slayer, because there's always one in the room and it doesn't get any smaller. So we've got to be able to read that, right? We've got to be able to step back, take that pause, and make sure we're not just checking the boxes and going through the tasks, the intelligence part of the work that we do. And then, yes, we know we've got to be emotionally intelligent for others and then self-aware for ourselves. And so we've got to read all of those spaces. And I've gotten very excited to now add that to my toolkit as I walk through my Elephant Slayer role.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Ellie, okay, I'm going to ask you what you see in this space because you work with numbers and you work
Mm,
with sometimes delivering not such good news.
Yeah.
What do you see in that piece of it?
I think it's really hard to read the room a lot. As you know, in accounting in particular, um, many people don't have this super strong emotional intelligence skills, and it is something I know I have to work on often, and that many of leaders have to constantly be working on. So, how can you give us some advice on like what are ways that we can always be working on our own emotional intelligence so that we can do a better job at reading the room, whether it's a social setting or an important business
Yeah.
conversation? Because I think the social settings help us practice for the business conversations, right? So if we can do it all the time, it's
you're absolutely correct, right? The same person showing up in both of those spaces, right? Right. Whether it's social or whether it's in the boardroom. I think you said it really well, Ellie, in the fact of we have to practice it. We have to be set that expectation. So let's take a meeting, for instance. Let's talk about before we even get in that boardroom that we know we've got some things to talk about that might be a little edgy. So let's set that tone and say it up front. This is what we're walking into. This is the conversation. So it's really addressing that elephant before we even step into the room. We do that through agendas, but it's intentional. And you said it really well, Ellie. It's an intentional, hey, I'm not really strong in this area. It doesn't come natural. I think, spoiler, it didn't come natural to anyone. This girl is working on it all the time. And that is a part of reading the room.
So I love Ellie's question, and I want to ask a follow up to that. And that is it ever okay to say, I'm reading the room and I'm sensing this?
Well, yeah. Have you been in the meetings that I've been in? Because that's exactly what it sounds like. Wait,
Okay.
let's just pause. I'm feeling something here. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then you get that like stare,
Mm,
like what? You know, I mean,
yeah.
because it's a
you,
real
you,
thing.
it is a real thing. And I, you can see, I'm just really excited about this because I feel the same way. Like, oh gosh, if we do that, and you do get the stare, you get the awkward silence, but you know what immediately follows, and it doesn't feel immediate? One, two others. Yeah, I was feeling it too. So it's someone's got to break that ice. Someone's got to say what we all are feeling, and it's not allowing us to get over the hump and get to what we're really trying to grapple with and get on the other, get through. It's not trying to get around it. And I think when we get to that place, you realize you're not alone. You're not alone feeling that. And as leaders, we've got to set that tone of saying, wait a minute, we can't just check this box and go through the agenda to get to the next item.
Yeah. Can I ask one more follow up on this one, Wendy? I'm really curious at if you experience someone that you're witnessing not being emotionally intelligent and being able to read the room. How do you help them better read the room, or how do you kind of interject so that they can do a better job, or is that like a side conversation you might have afterwards?
And you nailed it. You nailed it. That is definitely not something that happens in the room. You do make sure that you have that conversation. Hopefully, there's that one-on-one space that you have with that individual, whether a colleague shoulder to shoulder, whether it's someone that you're leading, but that you do make sure we don't just, it'll go away or we can deal, but you actually create a space and jump in a little to be curious, to ask that question of what did you hear or how did that land with you? I'm curious to find out because it seemed like, and again, we got to be very careful. See what I almost did? Assuming. Don't put words there, but to really just ask that question. But yes, on a separate note, if you're feeling that, and we'll get to what do those tools look like so that each team member has those resources because sometimes it really is just ignorance. I mean, we don't know what we don't know.
Right. Well, and we get so nervous, I think, especially if we've been working in a completely different environment and now we're coming together, or it's new. So let's talk about this cadence issue of slowing down and reading the subtle signs. This has got to be really hard because you're trying to do your gig and your shtick and lead and get through the agenda and all the numbers you have in your head, and then you're like, but wait, I've got to pay attention to everybody.
Whoa. How do we do both? And that tension, and you can feel that tension is real when we start talking about, wow, we've got to be able, there's a deadline. Again, I think we actually, before getting into that room, when we're doing those one-on-ones, when we're having those interactions and those conversations, you realize of what an individual is bringing into the room. That helps. Hey, we may need to take a step back. We have heard this. It's not mine. If we want to go fast, go alone. If we want to go far, we've got to go together. And so we're only going to be as strong as the person who is the most connected, the most moving, right? If there's a challenge there, we're really not going fast if we just keep pushing through. How many times do we check and then we come back to the next meeting and the next meeting and we're revisiting? Yeah, because we never truly addressed what we needed to. So we're actually not going fast. We're going backwards if we don't slow down.
Yeah, I think that was really going to be one of my follow-ups. I'm glad this was the next topic, because I was thinking about this. How do you get into your meeting, you're focused on delivering your message, right. You've rehearsed it, you know exactly what you want to say, and you're just delivering it. And then you're done. And no one says anything.
And no one says anything. You're like, well, did it just fall flat? And asking that follow-up question, and I was charged with this, and I thought, this has got to be so disrespectful when you turn around and say, so what did you hear? What did you hear me saying? Like, that's not going to land well. That sounds like I'm saying you're not intelligent or you can't understand. I was so pleasantly but surprised the first time after being charged from another leader, try this and get that clarifying. That silence is speaking volumes, and ask, how did that land? What did you hear? What did you see or get from that as far as your next steps? And again, it's brave to put yourself out there, but it just takes one to say, well, this is what I heard. And you can go, oh, you know what? I didn't see it that way, but I can get where you might have. And now we're back around I didn't just deliver a message. Now we are working around that message. So,
yeah, it's really an interesting aspect, because if you think about it, you are, as Ellie said, you're trying to do your work, your job, impart the information, change, spike up the group, temper the group, whatever. And then at the same time, you're trying to look around. Can you give us any ideas about what we might want to be looking for? Like, what does disengagement look like? I think this is also a generational issue and sometimes technological issue. What do you see there? Because, I always think of this line that I've heard you say before, and that is, curious leadership is courageous leadership. Reading that room and trying to figure this out, it's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough. And you mentioned several of the key aspects that make it so tough. We're reading a room that not everyone is in physically, right? And so that looks so different, looking at that little camera or forgetting to look at that camera. For 11 months, I led from a completely different state, and every meeting happened from the other side of the camera. And I had to remind, it wasn't just hitting the button of raised hand, because that would get lost too. That offline, to have those conversations. How do we manage a meeting where not everyone is in the room so that we can keep the connectivity? Remembering when we ask questions that we come back, we say, hey, so to our colleagues on the screen, what do you think? And making sure that, and I would, when we got to this point, say, let's start there. Let's start with asking the questions of those who are not in the room. Let's make sure that they have their agenda items not as an afterthought. Again, that's before we step into the space. And yes, what are some signs? Well, silence does not mean agreement. So don't take that's no one saying anything that everybody understands. Let's make sure that we're asking that question. Hey, again, what did you hear? How did that land? Where do you ask for that contribution even when it's quiet? And that's the courageous part. So much of what we're talking about is it's hard to sit in the quiet, but we've got to embrace that pause. We got to embrace that silence. We all process differently.
I really like that you said that. You have to embrace the pause, because I have sat in on a lot of board meetings where people say things, and then they ask for feedback, or does anybody have any questions? And then there's just silence. And if it goes on for more than a couple of seconds, they're like, okay, let's just move on. They're really not leaving enough space or provoking enough questions, I think. Like, how do we provoke more in that silence to make sure that people are speaking up when they're not sure what you're talking about, or they do have questions and they're afraid to ask them? Like, how do you know that that's a subtle sign too? Because as you said, we're all still doing a ton of virtual meetings.
Yeah.
Some people don't even turn their camera on, which is difficult. Or you can't see all the pictures on the screen when someone's presenting some materials, and you only see 3 or 4 faces versus all the faces. So I think if you can give us some tips on how to get more engagement, or at least ask the right questions to get them engaged to the best of our ability, that would be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, if the meeting gets so large, everybody becomes a little dot on that screen, right? So being able to see, and we have opportunity to say, hey, we know the deep work that we're doing, and Julia knows, and the audience knows, it's getting back around that why. If the why of what we're doing is so important, we've all got to be as fully engaged as possible. Because even if you aren't on screen and you're dialed in, the perception is that you could have a ton of other things going on pulling your attention. And so when we say, hey, what we're doing is so important, it's not that we're putting the requirement word, because as humans, we don't like that, but to say it's important, we are here for this purpose, and to be able to serve our community best, to be able to serve the mission best, let's make sure that we give this full 45 minutes. There's another thing. If it's 45, it's 45. Let's be respectful of each other's time, right? Because I think that that's the other reason why we get some of that dialed out, is that we don't respect the time in meetings. And there's a place of being present. And if we've got 45 and we have hit all the agenda items and it's been a great dialogue up to 33, all right, everybody go. It doesn't mean that we have to hold the meeting that entire time. So there are so many pieces there, but something as simple as cameras on, so that we all understand emotional intelligence. We understand what it means to read body language. If you shut me off, if you close that camera lid down, we're at a disadvantage. We are at a disadvantage, not just the person leading the meeting. And let's mix it up and let others lead. It's going to make someone comfortable, but don't let the same voice be the one who's facilitating every meeting.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I'm not as nice as you, because I've had meetings where I'm like, do we need to reschedule this for you for when you're going to be able to, join us on camera? And then
I love it.
I know, but I mean, because I'm like, don't disrespect my time and my energy and the people around me, because how can you be fully present if we don't have even that on camera? I mean, Ellie, you're dealing with people all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm imagining that this is a real thing for you, is that on-camera presence and behavior in the moment of these types of digital meetings.
It is, in our client settings, it's a much smaller group, right? We encourage our staff to talk to our clients on camera, because they're not, they don't go to their office as much as we used to. We used to go, and we encourage our staff constantly to be in person with our clients as much as possible. But when we're doing staff meetings, we have 800 people on a Zoom, but we require you to be on camera.
Yeah.
And
it changes the interaction, even if at 800, to have people who you can actually see.
That's right.
Absolutely.
100%.
And Julia, you said real quick, you said something about the fact of the multi-generations. And here's where we're going to step into some of that courageous conversation space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's asking the why. Why don't you want to be on camera? Because I've made the assumption as to, and when I touched on it and said, you're doing other things, you got your laundry going on, you're playing with the cat. what is there something else going on there? Because from generation to generation, what does it feel like? And I've recognized that there is some serious anxiety behind that camera.
Mm.
Yeah, I know, and I know you're a kinder woman than I am, and I
Not always.
no, I can woman up and say that, but I still think that while that's the gracious thing to do, at the end of the day, we have really important jobs, and especially, I mean, at
Yes.
this point in my lifetime, I feel like this is it, man. This is really an important time, and so to your point, what's the why? Show up and be present. I mean, it goes through like the whole arc of our conversation. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of time, but I want to make sure we finish up with this is like a big question for me. How do I, Julia C. Patrick in Phoenix, Arizona, change my leadership style when I'm in my 60s and I've always done it a certain way? How do we do this? Do we have to like move
Well,
to the city?
we got to start all over again, Julie. It's like new beginnings. Well, I mean, I'm not that far behind you, my friend. And I'm like, can the old dog really learn some new tricks? It really can. It comes down to, do I know my leadership style? Like, I know what I've been doing, but it's coming back to, let me take a pause. One of the tools that I use is called Five Voices. And I'll have clients who'll go, so it's okay to listen to the voices in my head? We all have a primary voice, so it's five, and we each have all of them, but one is primary and it leads out the conversation. But you've got to know what that is, and then we can walk through how the others really come to complement. And that fifth voice we affectionately call our nemesis voice, and it's the one that we have to work the hardest at and to actually have conversation with. So knowing your team and who they are, nature, nurture, choice, how they're showing up, that is really what it comes down to, is making sure that you have those resources. And we can say, hey, this is the type of meeting that we're having. And your voice is one who's a creative and you're out there in the future. Okay, that's what we're here to dream. Knowing that before we walk into the room is going to make a completely different interaction on how I lead at that point in time. Because let me tell you, creative is not my primary. And so that's what I have learned. And that's what's helped me to be in more of this courageous space. So even to our last point, Julia, I don't know if it's that I'm kinder or nicer or any of those things. What I have learned is I'm going to have that conversation with you one-on-one,
Okay.
where it's going to be more direct, so that when we get in the room, then it's cameras up. And if it doesn't happen, then it's, hey, we all remember why we're here. So let's get those cameras on.
That's interesting. Now, as I think about this question, also kind of this in a little bit backwards from where Julia said it, like she's felt like she's got her established leadership style after all these years. But what about the younger generation who doesn't really have one yet developed, or is not really sure what their style will be over time? What do you recommend for them? Like, I know I'm kind of in the middle of my career, and I think I've changed a lot. But also, if you're in the same audience for a long time, like I've been in the same company for 14 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you evolve your leadership style as the company evolves, as your personal growth happens behind the scenes, in and outside of work? Like, how do you manage that?
And I'm going to keep beating this horse over and over again. And let's put a little twist on it. First of all, emerging leaders used to be, no offense, but the bane of my existence. Like, how to manage. Like, what did you just hear me say? I said this. What did you hear? And so that's where I had to really step into this place. Okay, wait. I've got to ask some more questions. And that's where I was charged to, Wendy, don't make the assumption, because I am of the school, you show me who you are. You don't tell me who you are. And then it's take a deep breath. Let me ask the question in a different way. And so they want emerging leaders actually want someone, they're raising their hands in different ways and saying, help me figure this out. They want to be able to lead. They know they don't know all that they need to, but they want to be seen and heard. And I said it a little bit earlier. Let's give them those opportunities, whether it's leading out a meeting, leading out a project. And it's in that one-on-one space with those who are coming up and let's have that career development conversation. And we've had that on other episodes. What do people want to see out of their leadership at the organization, but beyond? And when we can have those conversations outside of the boardroom and the tasks that we're doing, that then will translate into the work we're doing together. And I can only say that because I'm reaping that now when I made that change. And that's where this old dog had some new tricks.
So is it okay to say, I am going to do some things differently, or I'm evolving my leadership style? So that, because I think there's nothing worse, I think, especially with female leaders, where they're like, well, she's having a bad day. And it's like they negate us based on gender and think,
Yes.
okay, she'll flip it back and be her normal self next Tuesday at 10 when we meet or whatever, right? So I'm wondering, like, how do we actually inform, as you said, read the room, but then also set it up to say, look, there's a new sheriff in town.
You said it so well. Well, and that, right, that's courageous on our part. It also shows, and we know this, the leader who leads with humility, I don't have all the answers, I'm working on it, that's a leader that people want to follow. So you said it really well, Julia. It's like, hey, here's an area I'm working on. I was not the courageous leader. And for any in the audience who I've led, they'll say, yep. But it has come in time, and we've got to be gracious to one another, that when someone's working on and they told you, that you allow them to walk through that process, because it's clunky of how that looks and what that feels like and how it's going to be received on the other end. But I absolutely, as I'm coaching leaders, reminding them, yeah, speak it out, set that expectation. You're going to see some things differently. And we all know when it's new, it's not, we don't have it all together right away, right? And we don't have it all together most days. But the bottom line is, when it's a new thing, it's going to be clunky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that transparency, right? That you're working on it, that you acknowledge that maybe the past wasn't your best self, or wasn't, isn't going to be the best self for the future. And that if you have a good relationship with your team, you can say those things. And I think that's one of the beauties of being with a group for a long time, is that you do have the safe space to be honest and open and ask for that grace. Like, I want to be different. But then, I've also experienced in my past life, and maybe there are many people out there who think the next way to take on a new leadership job, or redevelop their leadership style, is to change jobs. What do you say to those people?
Well, the self-select is not a bad thing. That's what I'm going to say. That may be, right? When we start talking about that why, and you really become that person who's a lot more self-aware, you're recognizing the organization, there may be a misalignment there, and it may be time for a change. So let's not take that off the table or see that as a bad thing. And when we have these tools in place, when we have these resources to really identify, oh, that's why I respond the way, that's why I come into the room, this is who I am. Again, nature, nurture, choice, because those things are real. We have a choice on how we show up. That can put some things in perspective that says, oh, no, I can be here. I need to be here. I want to be here. And the organization needs me to be here. We just both need to make some tweaks and changes as to how we're showing up.
Right. Well, you have shown up time and time again for us. Wendy F. Adams, CFRE. She is the CEO of Cultivate for Good. You can learn more about Wendy and her amazing energy and body of work at cultivateforgood.com. And then also sign up to listen to the Cultivate podcast. It's really great. I'm super proud of her. She's cranking it up and doing so well. What a great conversation. And Ellie, Hume, you did your first co-host. You were great.
Thank you, ladies. That was awesome.
Ellie, you made it easy. You
did. And I loved your questions, Ellie, given from the accounting side of things, the number side of things. And I love that you called it out, that you're in an industry and a part of the sector that might not have the most outgoing people, the people working with the numbers and that strategic brain might not be the, hey, everybody, I mean, so I loved that. I loved that part of this conversation. It was really cool.
I love to bring my numbers people in first to a conversation. I have such that's been a place where I have really embraced relationship, and it transformative. So yeah.
I'm
It's
glad to
really,
hear you say that, Wendy. I think that if you can get them on board with whatever idea you have, the better chance you have of getting everybody else.
I agree.
There you go.
I agree. Well, we have a lot of people on board with the nonprofit show, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and Holdings for Good. We are super excited to have had this conversation with two of my all-time faves. And I have met Ellie Hume IRL in real life. And so to have her on camera with us is even more of a joy. So thank you, ladies. We win, I should say, we do win, and we end each episode with this mantra, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.